One more response to the challenges of immigration is a new attempt to form connections with the rest of the local community. To tell us about the new campaign in Boston by A Faith That Does Justice is its founder, Father Peter Gyves. Thank you very much for being with us, Father.
Well, thank you for having me here.
I want to go back in your history a bit because your path to Boston here, it started way back in Central America, the 1980s? Tell us about that.
That's right, yeah. I'm a pediatrician by training, and I was actually doing medical research at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland in 1989. And it was at that time the Jesuits, 6 Jesuits and 2 co-workers were killed, assassinated by the government. And I went to El Salvador at that time in the midst of a civil war to really provide health care to the people in need. And it was that experience that really transformed my life. The witness of the Jesuits really defending the rights of the poor of that country, and also the testimony, the witness of the people in terms of really trying to live for a more just society for themselves and their children was really very powerful experience.
Talk about the faith factor. You went down there as a physician, maybe with a certain amount of social injustice in that, but what's the difference, that line you crossed when you decided to become a Jesuit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think really what happens is that you go down with the best of intentions, and I think what happens is you immersing yourself in basically human suffering. There's a response of compassion, but I think compassion at 2 different levels. I think the first level is we see compassion and the people who are suffering as the objects of our compassion. At a deeper level, I think we really begin to see it as me, a subject that needs to change, to walk in solidarity with the people who are suffering so that there can be change and a more just society. And I think that's what happened to me, and I think it happened to a lot of people I was with at that time.
Well, talk about how that plays out in Boston, because in a sense, the conflict that you got to know in the 1980s has come to roost here.
That's right, yeah. I mean, we have many people from Central America, from Latin America, from other parts of the world here in Boston. It's really quite a multicultural city. I was brought here, asked to come to Boston after piloting this program in San Diego, which was more of a homogeneous population in that the poorer people there were Mexican descent. Here in Boston, the Latino population must be 20 or 30 different countries. So what we try to do is in the different parts of our program, we bring both the vulnerable in as well as people with education and really put them together and try to facilitate breaking down barriers between them so that we can limit the fear between different groups and try to work together to really create situations that are more just.
Well, part of this, I guess, is you get people who listen to each other's stories. Try to picture what would it be like for somebody, let's say in East Boston, who grew up in this city, hearing the story from somebody who came here from El Salvador, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think what we're trying to, I think basically what I'm trying to do is really, in many respects, return the gift I received from the people of El Salvador, really living faith at a deeper level. Many people, I think, live faith as kind of an intellectual assent, whether it be Jew, Christian, Muslim. There's dogmatic belief. I think what I learned in El Salvador is really that belief really moves beyond the temple, beyond the mosque, beyond the synagogue, the church, really into society where the values of love and compassion and justice really play out on a day-to-day basis in the midst of suffering. And I think suffering is not just in other parts of the world. It's here in the United States and it's here in Boston.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Father Peter Gyves from A Faith That Does Justice. Father, there's a practical side to what you're hoping to accomplish in Boston. It's maybe to help some immigrants learn English. So explain how are you going to do that?
Right. The program has 3 different components. We do workshops which are smaller and more faith-based, but faith-based that moves to action. We then have a second component of large community meetings where we're attracting over 200 people to come and talk about social issues that affect the most vulnerable among us. The third component is really an action component, and that's what we're calling English as a second language. We hope to initiate that in the next several months, where what we hope to do is really train some of our English-speaking people to teach English as a second language to our more vulnerable people, many of whom are Spanish-speaking people. with the idea that by helping them learn English skills, they'll be able to function better in society in Boston and actually better in the workplace as well.
One thing I imagine is that, many of us who might tend to look at immigrants as either dependents or somebody who's vulnerable, when you get to know them, they're just an autonomous human being. They want to work, they want to make money, raise a family.
Yeah, I think that's a myth. I think that there's a stereotype that many of the people coming in somehow are they're violent, they've been exposed to drugs, they're carrying drugs. That by and large is a myth. I mean, there's that element of society in all aspects of culture. But the people coming up into this country by and large are decent human beings who are trying to find a life or make a life for themselves and their families that's better than what they know back home.
And what about the people who join with the immigrants, who spend the time volunteering maybe? What do they get out of it?
Right, another good question. I think what we're finding is that in this current political economic situation in this country and in this city, there are many people who are saying, I need to step up and do something, that I'm not content with the way the structure of life is going, political life in this country, and I want to volunteer. I have been a gifted life, many of us who have education, and I want to try to give back. And a group like ours is really offering an opportunity for people with education, with skills, to come together and sit at the same table with people who do not have education, do not have the opportunity that we have, mutually learn from each other, empower those who are vulnerable, and to help them get on their way.
By the way, you do have an event coming up in March. I think you'd like to let people know about that.
We would love to let people know. March 13th, at the Cathedral Church of St. Paul, we're going to hold our third community meeting of the year. And we've invited the Boston Globe Spotlight team to come to present their recent findings on racism that they had in the papers maybe 3 weeks ago. So it's an exciting event, and we hope people will come to participate. And really, it's an attempt to raise consciousness within the community so that there can be better understanding between the different cultures, races, and religions.
We should mention, if people want to find out more about your organization.
Yeah, they can get to us easily on the website at faith-justice.org, or they can go by email at info@faith-justice.org.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you very
Father
much.
Peter Gyves. Up ahead, a boost for STEM learning in the Boston Public Schools.